will start in order, but of the games this week, 43-40 was a popular score because it was also the score of TCU's win over Oklahoma State. And they do occupy the screen again this week because as kings of the Big 12 Mountain, that's who we're going to do. We're the biggest
unbelievable.
Story. Yeah, unbelievable. And Texas escapes. Iowa State is so snake-bitten. It's ridiculous. And Kansas has come back down to earth a little bit. Oklahoma is a little bit up off the map, but we'll see how that progresses. Oklahoma's defense is still garbage, and they have a long way to go.
Dumpster fire, garbage water, any of the...
Yeah. Kansas, we'll see what happens this week when they play Baylor and Jaden Daniels. No Jaden Daniels, we'll see, but all those things happening. But recapping last week, starting on Thursday night, Baylor goes into Morgantown in a game that they were completely in control of.
Yep.
And then they weren't. Yes, Blake Shapen got hurt. But if he doesn't fumble, even they were going to score in that drive.
Yeah, I mean, they had gotten it down, I think, down there with another big pass play to Gavin Holmes at that point. But, yeah.
Yeah, big pass play to Gavin Holmes, and then he just unforced error. Fumble by Blake Shapen there.
It looked like he just dropped the ball when he was running, but we look back at the replay. Somebody did hit his hand, but you got to just hold on. Like you have to hold on to the football.
Yeah, you were there in Morgantown.
Who was I
on Thursday night, Royden, and it was disappointing in a lot of regards because this is a team, Baylor, that should not. And I'm not trying to take away from West Virginia. They came up, and they took every opportunity to win that game and did it. They absolutely did it. But Baylor is cursed there, and if Baylor goes in and scores on that drive, West Virginia's not coming back.
I don't know what that's the first. Was that the first drive of the second half, or was that before the end of the first half?
That was before the end of the first half, where
right. So they would have gone into the half up like 24-10.
Yeah.
Not saying that Baylor doesn't, because we'll talk about this, I'm sure, throughout the show. That Baylor doesn't blow it.
30, like that would have been 24-10 at that time. Yes.
Yeah.
But
so we'll talk about this throughout the rest of the show, I'm sure, when it concerns Baylor. Not saying that Baylor wouldn't have blown a lead because they literally cannot tackle. But it does put you in a good position, something that they haven't really had all season outside of, well, especially in the Big 12, is the ability to close out teams.
Yeah.
Just put people away and just make them have to actually make adjustments. Now you go into the half, and West Virginia has momentum. They have,
and
I don't know. They don't have to make as many adjustments now. They're playing with their hair on fire.
So they were probably going to score on that drive, which would have made it 24-10 at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, it made it 17-17. Baylor came back and scored a minute and a half later to make it 24-17 going into half.
Right.
So again, you're looking at going into half 31-10, and now it's 24-17. Right out of the half, West Virginia scores, and
then Baylor, like, we're gonna go over this game because it's so mind-numbingly, like, just how did they lose this game? They get the ball. They're past, I believe they're at like the 40-yard line, or at least past the 50-yard line with 30 seconds left, and it's a 4th down call. And this is the one time in Dave Aranda's coaching career, it feels like, that he doesn't go for it. They punt back. Mm-hmm. You at least try to add a field goal there, right?
Yeah.
27-17 going into that. Anyway.
Yeah. So there were so many things that happened, but to me, the game turned on 2 plays. It was the fumble,
extra point.
And the block extra point that was a defensive conversion, which was good thing after a bad thing, or bad thing after a good thing. And a defensive conversion is the definition of a very bad thing after a very good thing.
Yeah.
Because it takes away you just scored a touchdown, but then gave back 2 points. It's like you only half did it. And I know it's not, but like all the feeling of joy is there.
I believe Amy Padgett on Twitter said something to the effect of, my favorite thing about this game, meaning the worst thing about this game, is that every good thing is seemingly followed by a bad thing.
And then you get a huge 4th down stop and then fumble right after that. Baylor ravaged by injuries in this game. Blake Shapen went out. I thought Kyron Jones played pretty well given the circumstances, but
for not having played any significant amount. I mean, look, he played in mop-up duty in several games, but not in any sort of meaningful minutes. Yeah.
But if you take the opportunities given that they had and would have been up 31-10 at halftime, Shapen can go out and Drones can come in and you still win the game. You know, you don't have to put it on him to go win it. And I think that that's the thing that will stick out. And the biggest thing is Baylor is supposed to be dominant along the lines. The offensive line is starting to slowly come back around, but the defensive line is not a strength of this team right now.
No. Defense in general is not a strength of this team.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, it's not the same team. There's so many people, there's so many holes in the secondary that were definitely lost from last year. It's like, oh, who would have thought that, you know, missing Jalen Petrie is like a big deal. But yeah, you know, it tends to be an actual big deal when you lose several defensive players to the NFL. But the defensive line held their own, I guess, but they're also not getting pressure on the quarterback. A lot of these players are already getting to the second level by the time these guys are having to try and make these tackles. But also on top of that, you know, Al Walcott, Matt Jones, they all have to play better.
Yeah.
They all have to play better.
Yeah.
But again, credit to West Virginia.
We haven't done that yet. Talked about their offense is good.
Their offense is very good. West Virginia to continue and hopefully make a bowl game going forward and cause some disruption, because that's what you're going to do now in the Big 12 is just ruin people's days. West Virginia to continue to do that. Your defense also has to make a lot of changes. Blake Shapen, even before the fumble and even after the fumble when he came, he was having a career day. He was going to throw for like 450 yards. Yeah. They allow Gavin Holmes, a 6-year senior who is what a bounce back for him, to go for 200 yards. Like there is some holes to fix. But granted, your run game turned completely around, which had been anemic all season. Mm-hmm. And, you know, JT Daniels made some really big throws. Those wide receivers made some incredible catches over the middle. Still turned the ball over late and gave Baylor a chance to like put the game away, and Baylor just didn't take the game, which is frustrating to watch if you're a Baylor fan. But yeah, credit to them. They went in there and won when, look, not for nothing, the fan base didn't even think that game was the entire upper deck wasn't even full. Like, the fan base was so out of that game until they got back into it.
I was on 3 different West Virginia podcasts last week, and all of them expressed concern about the attendance of the game. Yeah. Because people have kind of sold on Neil Brown right now. And I don't know if they need to do that necessarily. I think that, you know, let's see what happens down the stretch of this year as this team that's built almost entirely now out of the transfer portal kind of comes together.